And the award for most underappreciated frame manufacturer in FPV goes to Catalyst Machineworks. Now, if you're one of Catalyst Machineworks' diehard fans, you may be confused by that statement, but I think they deserve a lot more recognition in the world of FPV than it seems like they're getting. And maybe one reason they are not more widely recognized is that their crazy innovative frame designs mean that they also sometimes come up with crazy complicated designs that are difficult to live with. That was certainly true for me for the last freestyle frame they sent me, the Smooth Operator. But today, they've sent me this, the Catalyst Machineworks BangGOD, and it is a freestyle focused frame, and I really think that they designed this frame, well, kind of specifically to address some of the criticisms that I leveled at the Smooth Operator. So let's give it a fair shake. And why did they call it the BangGOD anyway? I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Understand the design of the BangGOD frame, we got to go back, not to its immediate predecessor, the Smooth Operator, but to the one before that, the Catalyst Machineworks America. And the America is a crazy innovative racing frame. Just forget this frame for a minute. The America split the flight controller, camera, and VTX into a 3D printed top part, a canopy, and the ESC and motors onto a base plate, which meant that you could change out the canopy and the motors simply by unplugging the 4-in-1 ESC and undoing some screws. I'm so impressed with this idea, and I'm so sad that I'm not the kind of racer who comes to a race with 10 of the same quad, because that is such an innovative and cool idea. And it's also why I kind of felt bad about my response to the Smooth Operator. When Catalyst Machineworks designed the Smooth Operator, basically they took the America base plate and they stretched it. And it kept a lot of the good ideas of the America, like the staggered arms, so the rear arms are a little bit higher and stay out of the prop wash of the front arms. And it added a whole bunch of crazy new ideas, some of which we're going to take a look at in the BangGOD. The arms on the BangGOD are interchangeable. Now you remove 2 screws and the arm will slip out. A brace can be installed across the front and the rear for additional rigidity, and Catalyst Machineworks, basically they recommend that you use these. If you absolutely need to save weight at the cost of durability, then you can remove them, but most people should have them on. I've got the front brace mounted here, but not the rear brace, so you can kind of see the difference. The top plate is almost identical in layout to the Smooth Operator, but whereas the Smooth Operator had 2 separate pieces for the top plate, this one is a 1-piece top plate. So if you need to do maintenance, it's very easy to remove the screws and lift the whole top plate off and get at all of your electronics. There are more screws than usual though. A total of 12 screws have to come out to take the top plate off, including these two Phillips head screws, which we'll take a closer look at in a minute. So it is maintainable, but maybe not quite as maintainable as some other designs. On the smooth operator, the arm's mounted with little carbon shims, which were really easy to lose and fiddly to line up. On the BangGOD, it's a very simple mechanism to mount the arms, just one screw from the top, one screw from the bottom, and these cool little standoffs. Some frame designers today are allowing you to mount the rear motors higher than the front motors, and this is not just a cosmetic choice. The rear motors on a quadcopter typically have to work harder than the front motors when in forward flight, because the front motors are creating turbulent air and the rear motors are in the turbulent air from the front motors. So they basically have to spin faster to make the same amount of thrust. By raising the rear motors up higher, when the quadcopter pitches forward and is in flight, the rear motors are just a little bit out of the turbulent air. In theory, this can increase your top end speed and make handling a little bit better. The BangGOD gives you the option of how you want to mount the rear arms. You can see we've got them mounted here in a traditional, just normal setup, but by simply swapping the position of the rear arm and the standoffs, the arms can move up. And because the BangGOD has a higher top deck, it's 22 millimeters between the bottom and the top plate. The rear arms actually will get up higher with the BangGOD than they would have on the smooth operator for even more of this effect. It's more betterer. If we look at this BangGOD, which I've built, well, you'll see I didn't choose to go that way. I've got my arms mounted in the traditional way. And two reasons I did that. Number one, I'm kind of uncomfortable with props being up next to the line of the battery. Just maybe that's the battery doesn't move that much, but I'm a little worried about the battery getting struck by the prop. The other thing is that the wiring from the ESC will be just a little bit messier if the arms are moved to the top and may interfere with the top plate a little. Also, I just now thought of this. If you did mount the rear arms on the top, then when you remove the top plate to repair the quad, the arms would kind of flop and fiddle around, whereas with this technique, they stay tight. So your call, you can do it either way. If you wanted to, I think you could mount both the rear and the front arms up high and almost kind of turn it into a remix. That's fascinating. That's actually more interesting to me than just doing the rear arms. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to take the top plate off now because I want to show you the really innovative way that the front end of the BangGOD connects to the body. And this has always been a challenge with quads that have a vertical camera plate. See, vertical plates like this are such a versatile way to mount the camera. We'll see that in a minute too. But connecting the vertical camera plates to the horizontal body plates, that's tricky to get right. It can often be a weak spot in the design. Some designs just have vertical body plates, but that actually has a whole bunch of complexity of its own. Really, I think horizontal plates, flat carbon plates, are the way to go. So what Catalyst has done is use a 3D printed part to actually turn this potential weakness into a strength. Now we're taking these screws out. I'll hold it sideways there. Here's the front end camera housing of the BangGOD, and it's got this 3D printed part here in the back, and that 3D printed part attaches to the main plate here at the bottom and here at the top. So it just goes on like this, and screws go up through the bottom, and likewise for the top plate. Which means that there's actually built-in shock absorption here in the front end. This 3D printed part is made of TPU, and when you do a head-on collision and this camera mount takes the hit, then this TPU helps absorb some of that impact, reducing the potential for damage. It obviously hit on anything hard enough and something's going to break, but I think this is a really clever way of, like I said earlier, turning a potential weakness into a strength. Very clever design. The BangGOD has mounting holes for 36 millimeter and 20 millimeter stacks, and it's got one set of mounting holes in the front and one set of mounting holes in the back. I also really love these slits here. I would use these to zip tie down an antenna, and my favorite way to zip tie down a VTX antenna is not to screw it into some kind of a bracket which is rigid and will break the antenna. What I like to do is lay the antenna kind of like this and zip tie here and here. That way no stress is placed on the SMA and the antenna has just a little bit of give. This is an incredibly durable way to protect the antenna, the cables, and everything. These slits right here are perfect for that kind of mounting. I don't know if that's what they intended them for, but that's what I would use them for. To finish up the review, let's take a look at this fully built smooth operator, which I didn't do a build series. Just this once, I actually just sat down with a YouTube video on in the background and I built a quad for myself. I am going to do a build series for this one. In fact, I'm considering doing my next perfect freestyle build using this frame. Let's see how this one holds up for me. You remember my perfect freestyle build? It's a little bit dated and I'm kind of not using that gear anymore. So this one, first of all, you're going to notice it's got the DJI air unit in it. And yes, you can see it very easily fits in. There are 3D printed parts if you are going with DJI to hold the antennas in place and at the approximately correct angle. The other thing we can see on this one that is not on the bare frame is how the GoPro mounts. And again, Catalyst has been very clever about this. The rear of the GoPro mount simply goes through this standoff and is fixed in place. And then the angle of the GoPro mount is set by this spacer here. The longer the spacer, the steeper the angle. So you can easily change the angle just by changing out that spacer. You don't have to reprint a whole new GoPro mount, but it still is pretty rigid and secure, unlike some other ways of mounting that I've seen. With this fully built quad, we can also see the versatility of the camera mounting situation. So the camera can be mounted in any one of these 3 slots. And the slots allow you to set both the camera height and the front to back position. So you can set the camera just perfectly so it's protected, but so that it doesn't stick out any further and get the frame in view. The downside of this approach is that most of the time, you're only going to be able to get 1 screw in. You will not be able to get a second screw in order to lock in the angle. That means that in some crash, it's been okay for me. I haven't flown the crap out of this one, as you could probably see from how clean it is. I'm sure in hard crashes the angle is going to move, and that's going to annoy me. And there might be some way to figure that out, but it's not built into the frame. If I can get this angle just right, you can see that at some tilt angles, you would be able to get a second set of screws in there. But at other tilt angles, you wouldn't. Don't see, like, I could almost lock that one down, couldn't I? You may be able to lock it down more than I thought at first. On this fully built quad, you can see how much room I've got here. I easily, without even really thinking about it, fit a 2-high stack. If you were going to try to go with a 3-high stack, I think you might struggle. But Catalyst was very clear that they looked at certain other popular frames that are not considered like slammed deck, and they made themselves have the same 22mm height as those other frames. So anybody who didn't like the height, they could say, well, that's how so-and-so does it, so it must be fine. It's not the most roomy. It maybe shouldn't be your very first frame, but it's plenty of room for an intermediate builder to put basically any equipment that they're looking for. And yes, that's even going to be true if you're looking for something like a RunCam hybrid or another split-style camera. You could put the flight controller and the camera up front, the ESC in the back, or maybe if you had slim style ESCs, you could get the ESCs on the arms, but that would probably be stretching it. So what would I change about the BangGOD if I were to change something about it? I might like a little more motor protection at the end of the arms. I know Catalyst comes from a racing environment, and so durability should be king, but in some ways, freestylers punish their quads a lot harder than racers do. Racers crash, and oftentimes they're crashing on grass, but freestylers crash, and we're crashing on concrete. I know, sometimes races are held on concrete too, don't get me wrong. The camera mount, I would like the camera mount to be able to lock the angle so that it's not changing if I crash. I'm not sure how I would accomplish that while still preserving the sort of flexibility that the current camera mount has, but that's why I'm not a frame designer. The ability to get at the top deck more easily would be nice. On typical frame, you might pull out 6 or 8 screws, so here we're pulling out 12 screws, and I don't know why that feels like a much bigger number, but it does. But I do worry that if too many changes were made to the design to accommodate that, well, number one, it just kind of looks cool. I mean, I got to give it that. But number two, I think that this is going to be a much more rigid frame than a typical sort of just 2-plate design. It's wider, and the reinforcing is further out, which is easier to twist, a little narrow thing or a wide thing, right? This wider frame is going to be stiffer and probably have better handling characteristics than some other types of frames. I'm also especially thinking of certain frames with a long unsupported top deck. I'll pick on the Rotorite HD1 because, you know, Rotorite are my friends, so nobody's going to get mad. Well, the Rotorite HD1 is a stretched version of the CL1, and in order to stretch it, they have 1, 2 standoffs, and then the third standoff. And whenever I see something like that in a frame design, I worry that resonance is going to be a problem. None of that should be an issue for the BangGOD. It's reinforced in the back. It's got tons of reinforcement, tons of stiffness, and presumably tons of strength. The smooth operator was a really durable frame. We can only expect the same from this one. So that brings us to the end of the review and the question that all of you have been sticking around for, I'm sure, and that is why they call it the BangGOD. Well, when they released the smooth operator, it was cloned on BangGOD, and they didn't even change the name. Like, they didn't change it from the Alien to the Martian. It was on BangGOD, and whoever cloned it just called it the smooth operator. And they were like, you sons of... They're from Texas. I'm sure they used some colorful language. So when they decided to name this one, they decided to, hey, if BangGOD is going to clone it, we'll just call it the BangGOD. But they couldn't call it the BangGOD, so they called it the BangGOD. Because, anyway, there you go. That's why they call it the BangGOD. It's just a great big FU to the cloners, so that when they clone, they won't have to change the name too much. If you are interested in this frame, there are links down in the video description. And I think I'm going to do a build series on it eventually. I won't say soon because I know how I am. Those links are affiliate links, and I do appreciate if you use them. I get a small commission if you use them, and that helps me pay the bills. I certainly appreciate that. If you like the look of this frame, of this quad, Catalyst also sells a ready-to-fly version. You can just buy basically this, what you see here, built either with, they sell it with the DJI Air unit. If you have DJI and you want this quad, they will just sell you one. Or you can buy it with analog stuff. They do ready to flies as well. And I've met their builders, I've seen their work. Top-notch work. This is not just a slap together. Anyway, really good work. That's going to do it for this video. What do you think of this frame? Is this a freestyle frame for you, or is it too complicated and fiddly and just like, I just want carbon, carbon, screw, screw, standoff, done. What's with all these kids these days with their complicated frames? What do you think? You like it? Let me know in the comments. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and happy flying. Just lost my brain on the outro. Happy flying, everybody.